Good morning. It's the 21st day of March 2025 from the kitchen table. Very, very good day here in rural Ireland. They're talking about rain. Oh, what a great time weather-wise we've had. Now, one of the things I've just heard there on Shannonside Northern Sound, I'm out trying to do a little job in the workshop and I'll be sharing it with you later if it works out. And one of the things on Shannonside Northern Sound there is about a poor unfortunate parents of a child that was killed by an immigrant who had several convictions on which the law had no effect. And they're looking for an inquiry. I won't get in there. I don't know much about it, but my heart goes out to them. That's all I can say. The thing about it is, if we had proper vetting of people coming into our country, even from the EU, and you can block them on crime on the EU, we would lessen the significant chances of these things happening. However, the people representing the poor unfortunate person who was killed made the point about an inquiry that there's a lack of democracy. And of course there's a lack of democracy. But it must be remembered that most of the people who are lamenting the death of this poor person will vote Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael no matter what happens. They cannot be stopped from doing it. We must get that through our head. This must permeate down. And when you're in having your dinner in the restaurant, and there's a fella beside you, you must accuse him. You know damn well unless he's a wild head on him to show out Sinn Féin, that he has been voting Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. And we must pin it on them and say it's your fault. That's nothing to do with me. Oh, you voted for either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. That whole philosophy must be got into people's heads, so that when they go into the polling booth, they maybe consider somebody else. I mean, when you consider that a lot of people gave me their number one vote and supported me 100% and lamented when I didn't get elected in the last election, they still crossed number two to Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil candidates. So my number one was as good as a number two. So this is the problem, and by identifying the problem, we help to sort it. Now, in the Daily Mail today, this Brenda Power of People, is talking here about the McGregor situation. I understand there's an appeal taking place in Dublin today on this thing about the award of 250,000 to that lady. So therefore, totally inappropriate for me to comment on it. All we can do is wish the court and everyone well in getting to the truth and doing it safely. That's all we can do. I have been rooting around in the courts all my life, in criminal cases mostly, but some civil. And I really didn't have a problem with judges. And I found that when I got into the witness box and got explaining my case, that they come along. So I don't have a grievance with judges. It's only when they refused to implement European law on the environment, as we were promised, that I began to get a bee in me bonnet. But on the McGregor case, that's a different thing. That's a civil case. Now, I've checked up the Citizens Information Bureau in Ireland, and what the jury does in a civil case, there isn't always a jury, but what a jury does in a civil case is it finds fault. It decides where fault arises. There's no such thing as convicting. There's the finding of fault. So if two cars run into other on the road, the jury, if there was one, or the court, finds the fault. Who is the fault? And sometimes in a traffic accident, you get a 30% one lad and 70% the other. And maybe if there's three in it, it could be 30, and the remaining 40 for someone else. You get the point. So it's to find the fault. Who was at fault? And the guidance of that then is the duty of care to people around you. In Donoghue versus Stevenson in 1932, we all have a duty of care to our neighbours to act in a way that will not endanger or hurt them. All right, enough on that. Best of luck to you up there in Dublin, and I hope justice is served. Now there'll be arguments within arguments on whether this should have been produced and that would have been produced. That's how it goes. Off you go. Enough said there now. But McGregor is not out of the news by a long shot. And Brenda Power says, our cowardly politicians paved paved Conor McGregor's way to the White House. It is, she reads here, it is almost an aside in the Taoiseach's interview in the local radio in Galway last week, a casual comment that could have passed for an afterthought. If baloney, this power and rights. Why didn't she say what she means and get on with it? If you were paying attention, though, you'd have heard a very significant but sadly related admission by this government that they have not been listening to the local communities on the subject of immigration. Now, the big question should come to your mind there is, where does Brenda Power stand? As I understand it, and if I'm going to guess forward, I'd say she wants consultation and then the migrants brought in. So what she's complaining of is the migrants are brought in and then there's consultation or none, but it should be the other way about. I say the concern of the communities should be taken into account when deciding migration policy. It's the same when we talk about consultation on the North-South interconnector, the pylons and the wind farms that don't do the proper SCA, and then they try to ram it down with a fake public consultation. By now, this spineless has handed control of the debate to the most sinister voices on social media. I hope she's referring to me. How come I'm not ever getting mentioned? I'm very upset about not. I feel very small. A man like me, a farmer with cows. Oh, right. Despicable character like Conor McGregor. Isn't that something? He has convictions for driving offences. We know that. He paid his penalty. I would appeal to him to obey the law in driving because there are a lot of deaths on the roads still, and that's what happens. But to say that he's a despicable character, he has no conviction for any felony, any sexual assault. He did hit a fella in a pub and he had to pay compensation. I don't know what the offence was. It was probably assault. And he apologised now. And he shouldn't have hit him now. Fairness to play. But these fellas are all full of beef. They're eating beef and lamb and mutton. They're full of beans. I tell you one thing, I'd get tight to beat McGregor in a row. I'd take a tough. I think he could actually win. I wouldn't take him on now too easy, and I wouldn't want to take him on because ultimately he is not a despicable character, right? Like McGregor, to cosplay as the silenced people's champion. Now straight away she uses a big word. This is the trick of these old woke media women media, woke. I'd say she's woke when you hear that. Cosplay. How many people reading the Irish Daily Mail know the meaning of cosplay? I have to say it's not used much around the cattle mart. It comes from the word costume. And you know when I do Val's Pictorial Weekly, I put balloons in here for boobs. That's cosplay, costume play. But of course, she has to show. Oh, I know a little bit more. I was educated, you know. I was at university. She knows a big word. When all this dressing up would just be equal to it. And of course, he wore a nice green suit, very expensive suit, to the White House, and he dressed properly, not like Zelensky that didn't pay respect to the president. So, despicable character like Conor McGregor, to cosplay as the silent people's champion. They decided it might be a good idea to heed the concerns of the public after all. Who decided? I don't hear anybody deciding anything. On Galway Bay FM, Simon Harris was invited to comment on a listener's claim that local councils were being run by chief executives and agendas, while the councillors directly elected by their communities to represent their views are being sidelined. At present, every local authority is managed by a civil servant who, as chief executive, has a wide range of powers, including making contracts for development like asylum centres on behalf of the council, and also pylons and wind farms. I have pushed them through the courts on several occasions, and I'm responsible for about 8 or 9 judicial reviews in which we try to call out these people. And I'm learning all the time where anyone makes a statement in future or an affidavit, they'll be called and cross-examined, and that'll frighten them. So this is the thing. Now, There's no democracy. I made a video about Clifford Kelly. It was meant to be funny, about him accusing me of having money. I hope everyone saw that, the Patrick's Day parade. It's a bit of fun, really, but that's all it was. I'll say he knows that. But the thing about it is, he said at the meeting last year, him and Paddy McDonnell, a then Sinn Féin councillor, we'll soon be a minority in our own land. So he is not happy with this. The Taoiseach appeared to agree that the balance of power between elected representatives and civil servants needed recalibration, saying it needed recalibration. He's the very one that took it away. He's the very one that passed all the laws to give their implants on councils the power that the minister can overrule the elected representatives. So this is crocodile tears. I believe we should be given more power back to the democratically elected councillors in this country. That's why I wouldn't run anyway. For a start up in my area, as long as Clifford Kelly's running, you wouldn't beat him, and I don't really care. I wouldn't really want to. But, it wouldn't matter. They have no power anyway. They're completely and utterly outlawed. And nobody ever takes a constitutional challenge or anything. I'll always come down on the side of those who are elected. He's a liar, a dirty, rotten liar, Simon Harris is. His party and his government have taken away the power of the councils for years, being the ones who should make decisions. That's a liar. He's a liar, Simon Harris. Which is perhaps another way of saying that he'll always come down on the side of the people they represent to make the decisions that those voters supported. That's a load of gibberish anyway. Now, you wouldn't have thought that, true though, during the lifetime of the last government, in which the Taoiseach also served as the Taoiseach, Mr. Harris acknowledged that flashpoints around the connected issues of immigration and housing were due sometimes to the lack of engagement that can border on a lack of respect for local elected representatives. Well, it's not. Because it doesn't matter what consultation there is, they're going to shove the migrants in anyway. Voting in a local election on migration, you have no say because the government has taken away the power of the councils to make decisions about planning in their areas. Which is perhaps now, but blaming the civil servants for having agendas that ran counter to local sentiment is a bit of a cop-out. Why is it? If 100% of the people don't want migrants or something else or windmills or pylons, why is blaming them a cop-out? They're the ones who make the decision. They were put there by the minister to make that decision. And in the case of the EIA law, they're breaking the law. In the case of European law, they're breaking the law. That's why I see a way of challenging them and have tried to beat them on that. And we have beaten them in some cases. The reality is that for years under governments led by Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, there was a quasi-official policy of stifling and demonising public opinion on immigration. Well, sure, if they listened to it, there wouldn't be any immigration, would there? Local councillors who tried to voice their constituents' concerns when their town-only hotel was purported as International Protection Accommodation Services, IPAS accommodation, were characterised for their intolerance, and objectors denounced for their right-wing bigots. TDs who tried to argue that high immigration was bound to affect the availability of houses were denounced as reckless rabble-rousers. Well, she's kind of right in that. That is true. It just come to my mind there that Clifford Kelly said at the meeting that the whole council in County Cavan asked the question of the government, how many migrants were there, who were they, and all of this clarification. They were told to shut the hell up. They got no information. Right? I just remembered him saying that. 3 years ago, independent TD Carol Nolan asked the then Housing Minister Darragh O'Brien if his government was assessing the impact of the enormous rise in immigration on the ability to deliver housing to its own citizens. Mr O'Brien promptly accused her of calling for a cap on immigration. See, Mr O'Brien accused Carol Nolan of calling for a cap, a reduction on immigration. And he still got elected. That's what I'm saying. We are a minority because these jackasses that vote for O'Brien don't realise the impact of it. They're too stupid to understand the impact. And said her comments posed a threat to social cohesion. So what's socially cohesion about bringing in the population of Zambia or of Somalia or Russia, which we don't know who they are, bringing them into a town like Ballaghaderreen where they outnumber the population? What is socially cohesive about that? The only good thing comes out of it is that the people of Ballaghaderreen are voting for these other Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil creeps, not them all, and Sinn Féin, and they vote knowing well this is what they're going to do. And when there was good parties like my own Irish Freedom Party and the National Party, they refused to support them. That's the real problem. Rather than addressing the issue then, the minister chose to target the politicians raising the issues and accuse her of fomenting division and inciting discord. And still got elected. That's the point. When it came to immigration, the three main parties felt it safer to sing off the same hymn sheet that immigration was enriching our country. Cultural enrichment. A crowd of Muslims who believe in Sharia law, who treat Christians as kafirs, and who, when they get their way, have always beheaded Christians. And over in Syria, they're killing thousands and thousands of Christians at this very minute. And this is supposed to be social cohesion. Enhancing our gene pool. Yeah, they want all the Irish girls to lie down with all these foreigners, black, white, yellow, and everything else, and have them multicoloured. This is what they crave. This is the ideology behind this. But they won't have their sons or daughters mixing with them. And how could you possibly have too much of a good thing? Well, she's right in that. Sinn Féin belatedly got their message after it was drubbed in last year's local elections, when it decided to change tack on the boundless benefits of unchecked migration. Well, that's news to me. As far as I understand, Matt Carthy, Pauline Tully, and that other Catherine Bennett and Cavan Mullen, and all over the place, they love migration. They're 100% behind it. That's not true. That Brenda Power's talking nonsense on this subject. The Greens, perhaps unfairly blamed for the last government's sure feet. Where did you ever hear a word called sure feet? S-U-R-F-E-I-T. Sure feet. I mean, this is what these ones write. Of wokeness. Were decimated in the general election, and the Taoiseach comments last week suggested a major tactical reset is on the way. It was all the fault of senior civil servants on the agenda-driven solo runs. If only we'd known they didn't always represent the views of the decent, fair-minded citizens. Am I fair-minded? Am I decent? Well, I'll not answer that question. Funny enough, the likes of Conor McGregor knew that, though, in the vacuum caused by the craven censorship, where ordinary folk found themselves dubbed far right for just asking to discuss immigration, malign actors flourished. Malign actors, that's me. Yet there was over 300 people came to a meeting in the small town of Kingscourt. When Conor McGregor can access the White House podium to pose as a fearless tribune of truth and justice, claiming to speak for the abandoned people of Ireland and implying that the Taoiseach has misled the Americans with their own upbeat message just a week earlier, we have a problem. Brenda, you have a severe problem with a farmer with cows called Val Martin. Because I can articulate my case a lot better than you. And you can add to that, if ever I get a voice, what are you going to do? What is the government going to do? The disgraceful consequences of political cowardice on immigration issue materialised before a rise last week, swaging around the Oval Office in an ill-fitting pinstripe suit. Isn't that a condescending old yoke to write that? an ill-fitting. This is a mixed martial arts champion. This is an unbelievably tough person. He came from nothing in Dublin. He built up his career. He trained. He done everything. The RT is all night about boxing. Oh, Katie Taylor won this and Katie Taylor won that. And yet he achieved this. And she expects him to be some kind of a super guest. A bit like James Bond arriving in to meet the Queen. When in fact he is a very rich man from his efforts. Good luck to him. He has his imperfections. He's full of beef, and he knows the country he was reared in is, and me, we're on the right, all on the one side. We see our country being destroyed. He loves this country, or he wouldn't do that. And they can't believe it. And I have plugged and even canvassed Irish people in Ireland who have votes to vote for Donald Trump. So you can argue about that. So that's the story, folks. That's the story. And I've dealt with it fairly well. Well, at least she did give a bit to him. Donald Trump is currently deporting all he can out of America. Fair play to him. The judges there, the woke judges, are trying to block him. We'll see how that goes. The migrants are coming into Ireland more than ever. The Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, when they got rid of the Greens, it's more migrants that were in, not less. Rodney O'Gorman's policy still lives on big time. This is what our neighbours are voting for. And what happened in the United States proved that it can be changed. The European Union has cancelled the candidacy of the prime candidate. They've ruled out, the man that won the election in Romania has been ruled out. The Germans have ruled out the alternative for Deutschland. And they're working on banning Marine Le Pen. So that don't talk to me about democracy. Don't talk to me about democracy. There's nothing democratic about Europe or anywhere else. And the quicker the whole lot comes tumbling down, the better. And we'll send every one of these people back. Those who are not here for good reasons and don't go through the system will be exported back and sent back, given €100 and pumped back. They're walking around the streets doing nothing for the last 5 years. In Germany, and I don't know about in Ireland, these Muslim men, black men from Africa and Asia and all of this, mostly of that background, are going up to women on bus stops and demanding sex. And they're making the case that they can't get sex in Europe. That if they were living at home, they'd have plenty of sex. And they want the women out walking their dogs and the little dainty women to come up the back alleyway. And that's only a small way away from pulling her up and raping her. If there's two of them in it, they can rape her. And they're on about Conor McGregor. He has no conviction for rape. There's a finding by a jury. That's it. Okay, folks. Comment underneath. I wouldn't rule out the fact that we will eventually win this battle. I wouldn't rule it out. Good luck. Thank you very much. Bye.